competition among Christians who's more Christian than someone else. It's like,
right.
it doesn't come up. But when I got into Jewish life, there's this, it's filled, whether it's stated or unstated, with who's more Jewish than the next guy.
Yeah, totally. You're right. It's very strange. I don't know. Do you think it's productive?
Well, I think I didn't understand it until I was listening to an academic lecture on Jewish identity in the diaspora, and it said that for 2,500 years, Jews have been the minority pretty much wherever they've lived, and therefore to survive as Jews, they've had to define themselves as opposed to the majority culture. And so that's why this insular group is obsessed with degrees of Jewishness as defined by not doing what the majority culture does, and that's the way that this group has sustained itself. Because other minority groups have been flushed down the toilet of history. I mean, Jews are the oldest, or certainly one of the oldest, ongoing cultures that have lived as a minority amongst the majority in the diaspora and survived with their own unique identity for 2,500 years. So according to this professor, and this makes sense to me, this is kind of the price of maintaining Jewish identity, is to be constantly obsessed with defining yourself as opposed to the majority. For instance, like Christmas trees. Like in Orthodox life, it's never discussed because it's not even a possibility. But in Reform temples, around December, there's all this talk about why Jews should not have Christmas trees. That's an example of like defining themselves against the majority, because as Reform Jews, as opposed to Orthodox, they're much more assimilated, and so there's much more anxiety about this.
Yeah. And there's always this question of how much do you bend before you break, right?
Right.
Like how do you keep people in the fold by sort of conceding certain things before you've conceded so much that folks are no longer sort of identifiable, recognizable as Jews. And that seems to me that's sort of the central tension in a lot, pretty much any sort of multi-generational Jewish novel or Jewish story. It's all about that. It's about this gradual erosion through assimilation over the course of maybe 2-3 generations, right?
Mm-hmm. Except for in the last 15 years, the majority of Jewish literature has come from those who either come from a serious background in Orthodoxy or have spent a serious amount of time in Orthodoxy. So there's like there's a switch.
Like what writers are you thinking of?
Well, I've interviewed about 30, so I'm going to 30 novelists of American Jewish literature in the last few years, and I'm going to look for their names right now as we're talking. Rebecca Goldstein would be one that comes to mind. Let me look at my list here. Paul Abraham, Shalom Oslander, Melvin Jules Bouquet, Ehud Havazelet, he wrote Bearing the Body, Dara Horn, Tova Mervis, John Papernick, Thane Rosenbaum, Laurie Gwen Shapiro, Robert Siegel, Diana Speckler, Steve Stern, Ayelet Waldman. So those are just some of the names. I mean, I guess they're names to me, but none of them may mean anything to you.
A great number of them mean nothing to me. I'm sort of thinking of, the folks, some of my peers and some of my friends, sort of as a counter strain of Jewish literature. That's people like Peter Orner, Sam Lipsyte, Keith Gesson, who are also publishing books that are viewed as part of Jewish literature, but are coming from a radically different sort of perspective, and may or may not even be writing about things that are identifiably Jewish. I mean, to me, that's an interesting question. It's like The End of the Jews is my third novel, but it's the first time anybody thought to put me in the category of Jewish writer.
Yeah.
You know, and I think there are, you know, I doubt that Sam Lipsyte does a lot of like Jewish writer gigs. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know, or folks like, and, you know, and I think there's a number of us for whom, you know, it's. I mean, one of the great things about writing books is that you get to write a different book every time. You get to have a whole different set of concerns and things that drive you crazy every time. And you know, this time out of the box, I'm doing these, you know, talks at synagogues. The Jewish community didn't ask me to come talk about Angry Black White Boy, my previous novel, and I'm pretty sure they won't ask me, even now that I've written a book that is sort of concerned with topics related to Judaism, I'm pretty sure that they won't invite me when my next book is published. You know, A.J. Jacobs has done a lot of Jewish-related stuff with the Year of Living Biblically, but I doubt that he was doing it the book before that. You know what I mean? Peter Orner, I think, did a bunch of stuff for his first book, and when his novel came out, I know because, you know, he's a friend of mine. Like, you know, the phone stopped ringing with Jewish, you know, programmers on the other end. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You know, and I could, you know, if I put my mind to it, I could probably think of, you know, another 5 or 10 writers to add to that list. My friend T. Cooper would be another one. He, you know, did some Jewish book fairs for the last novel, but for the first one, you know, nothing. T and I co-edited a book of short stories, so that's 2 Jewish writers co-editing an anthology of stories, with a decent number of Jewish writers in it, in fact. And you know, it's not like it wasn't sort of directed at or made visible to Jewish communities. So you know, there was nothing around, you know, in that context. You know, I think it's interesting. It seems to be on a book by book basis that the sort of Jewish community on a formal level, like, you know, the Jewish book circuit, the synagogues, the JCCs, who might or might not want to have you, it doesn't seem to be a sustained interest in the careers of like young Jewish writers, except when those writers are specifically talking about Jewish subject matter, you know?
Yes. Yes. When you encounter someone who says, "I'm a proud Jew," what do you think?
I don't think I ever encountered people who say that.
Okay.
It's not something that seems to come up in conversation a lot. I think one of the things I've been frustrated by is the sort of the way that Judaism has become like a marketing has been marketed. Again, this goes back to this notion of like, you know, like there's this whole sort of like, you know, you go to some of these festivals and things like that are targeted toward young people, and there's all this like rah, it's cool to be Jewish kind of stuff going on. Like,
yeah,
it's like, you know, you should be proud to be Jewish. Jewish is cool. It's like, why should it be cool? Like, cool shouldn't enter into it. Like, it's such a flimsy reason for wanting to do anything. Cool is such a mutable concept. It's like, well, if it's cool this year, that almost by definition means it's not cool next year, whether you're talking about a fashion statement or an album. So, you know, I guess it depends. For me, it would depend on what that pride is based on. If it's based on somebody telling you that it's cool to be Jewish, whatever that means, then it seems sort of meaningless. If it's based on some kind of more deeply felt, deeply understood, deeply studied notion of connection with the religion or the culture or anything, then great, you know. But, you know, I guess the other thing I would ask is, you know, what else are you proud of? Is that the sole thing that you're proud of? Is it the only sort of element of your identity, or is it one of many things you're proud of? And how does that pride translate? Like, how does being Jewish inform the way you see yourself in the world as, you know, a mother, a father, a child, a student, a teacher, you know, somebody who can vote, somebody who can, you know, do any number of these things. You know, it reminds me that there was a Sesame Street skit that I used to see a lot as a kid where, you know, they asked this kid, you know, one of these, like a Muppet kid, it's like, hey, so who are you? He's like, well, you know, I'm a son to my mother, I'm a student to my teacher, I'm a grandson to my grandfather, you know. He goes on, and I think the point of the skit was to make kids think about the multiple elements of their identities. I think that's something that, you know, maybe we don't. There are a lot of forces trying to sort of pigeonhole us and make us define ourselves